Last weekend, I participated in a walk to demand justice for the victims of the Easter attack in 2019. While walking, I wondered, because I tend to think a lot, what is the justice we are seeking? Now, I joined the walk as an ally, so I will not speak over their demands, but just speaking for myself. When I was a child, I understood justice to mean that the perpetrators are caught and punished, but it was an answer that, for various reasons, I was never entirely satisfied with. However, nobody else seemed to have a problem with it, so I kept the crazy ideas percolating from my overthinking to myself. Many years later, I realized that actually I wasn't the only person dissatisfied with this kind of justice, which is actually retributive justice, and that there are other avenues, like, for example, restorative justice. In a way, it's surprising that it took so long because Buddhism is more aligned with restorative justice than retributive, but also not surprising because our colonial invaders were very effective in suppressing our indigenous wisdom of, among other things, non-violence, so much so that people in Sri Lanka will now reject restorative practices as a Western idea. Anyway, my wife and I, developed a keen interest in restorative practices, and as a manifestation of that, when we became parents 9 years ago, we consciously and deliberately decided not to use any form of retribution. So not only no punishments, but also no rewards, essentially bribes, only restoration. And when we started a democratic school 3 years ago, again, no punishments, no rewards, only restoration. And of course, people laughed at us because parents and schools everywhere in the world use rewards and punishments on children to control them. And in Sri Lanka and several other countries, even corporal punishment. I recently had the opportunity to develop and help deliver a training program for teachers to eliminate corporal punishment, and it didn't really work too well. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I realized that adult proponents of corporal punishment, and we have many of them in Sri Lanka, were probably victims when they were children of corporal punishment, either directly or indirectly, and they have not received justice for the violence inflicted on them. And if you tell them, without any form of restoration or healing, that it is not necessary to hit children, it actually makes their trauma worse. And as long as they carry that trauma of that violence, it will manifest in their attitudes, it will manifest in their behaviors, and if they hit children, then it becomes intergenerational trauma. And this cycle of intergenerational violence isn't only about corporal punishment, it's the abuse of authority by caregivers, parents, and teachers to intimidate children, to demean them, to patronize them, to ignore their opinions, to coerce them into doing things that they don't want to do, actually to dehumanize them. If adults did to each other the things that are entirely normal in mainstream parenting and schooling, it would be considered assault or harassment, but for children somehow it is discipline and education. So what can be done? I have, of course, been thinking about this a lot as well, but what I'm really excited about these days is that my proposal to include this topic as a session at the International Conference of the European Forum for Restorative Justice was accepted. So next month in Estonia, in addition to learning about the latest developments in restorative justice from leading practitioners and researchers, I'm looking forward to working with them to identify solutions on how to heal intergenerational trauma and end all forms of disciplinary and educational violence against children. I also want to express my gratitude to my friends and well-wishers from around the world, actually from every continent, whose generous support is making it possible for me to participate in this conference. Thank you very much.